What up, guys? What up? What up? What's going on, Lobo? ¿Qué pasa? What's going on, my guy? I haven't seen you in chat much. You've probably been in, probably I want to say where the tendy shop is. But what an interesting day. I think today was pretty phenomenal. I mean, exactly what the Bears wanted. It just felt like a waterfall. But few things kind of just stood out to me. I think those of you that kind of saw, I did highlight. I mean, I didn't necessarily write it out on more so, but I kind of dropped a video yesterday on TikTok that was we kind of got basically the warning sign that came from I wouldn't say what two famous people. Kathy Wood dropped something about commodities, and then Elon Musk was also kind of just giving us the alarm on inflation and that was just two red flags you want to say. The other thing that actually occurred yesterday was also the fact that industrial ETF actually hits an all-time high yesterday. So that was pretty much three things that you could say kind of gave you a little bit of an alarm. We already knew what the bond market was up. The bond market has actually been broken for quite some time, and we knew it was only a matter of time until the bond market was going to spike. And that was a hell of a move. I think the 2 years up, what, about 17 cents here? And then the 10 years up about another 6 cents. So that was insanely crazy. Looking at how the bonds just spiked, that was beautiful. But again, the red flags yesterday did I necessarily think that we were going to get that kind of dump today? I kind of felt like it was a little bit too easy to get this kind of dump so quickly today. I actually thought that we would hold out until maybe at least Thursday here when we got the jobless claims and the retail numbers. So that was a little bit more of the alarming part to me. I was not partaking in most of this today because, well, during the day I did, but I did not hold anything up from overnight. So that's why I was like, when I saw us down, I was like, wow, I definitely should have held something. But it could have also gone the flip side. So I felt comfortable with that being cash, but that was a beautiful day to pretty much just be in puts. I think at any point of the day you had an opportunity to get in puts. That's when you had such a beautiful trend like today was. When you have these trend days, it's really just like that. Like yesterday, if you just saw Apple continue to pretty much push and push and push, that's when you have those opportunities to pretty much get those scalps, right? So vice versa, you had the opportunity to scalp to the downside at whatever given time of the day. So that was pretty much what stood out to me between the alarming alerts yesterday, what was pretty much an opportunity today. Kind of getting into the levels here really quickly then, and what I would probably say is if most of the charts that I'm going to look at after looking at futures here is likely going to be those larger degree time frames. After you have such a large degree move today, where a lot of these tech names are basically down double digits, now you're looking for those next key demand type of zones where you expect to be a short-term bounce, a dead cat you want to call it, or you expect some kind of meaningful reversal. So that's what I'm going to go over, whether it be the daily or the weekly. But getting back to futures here real quickly, I was basically looking, I had an anchor view up. If you kind of see as I stretch out the chart as much as I can here, you see that nice little purple line underneath our little black line in there in the middle. That was basically our anchored view up that was sitting from our COVID lows. That's actually where I was expecting to pretty much find the bounce. You see, you had a little bit of a pretty much a little bit of a dead cat, you want to say, quote unquote, right around that 39.92 ish level to 39.90. You had the little bounce there up to above that 4,000 mark before you ended up seeing a continuation to the downside. That was very brief for that matter. But that was your little bounce that I saw. That was a key level though, was that anchor view up from COVID lows. That's what actually stood out to me. So I was looking at that. Once we ended up flushing below that, that's when I had my next level basically sitting right around that 39.46 level. And you could basically see you shot over a little bit where I had another little key level sitting at that. What was a prior resistance at that 39.40 flat. We had the bounce there, and that's what you saw into the end of the day. It was not more so a relief that I expected into the day. I definitely expect a little bit more of a relief off of the market. But as you heard Dapper pretty much on live just mentioning, there was just no buying pressure at all, not even to the end of the day to give us a dead cat to pretty much set up for a dump overnight. That I do think that there's going to be a little bit more of a bigger bounce per se, just because of the fact of how weak we ended up closing. And for all these, pretty much all these names are down so significantly, I think there has to be somewhat of a bounce. And when I say bounce, I mean dead cat, not necessarily a meaningful reversal. All right. So tomorrow, what am I going to be looking for? As long as we hold this 39.40 low that we put in today, I would look to pretty much retest that 39.90 mark from that anchor view up of COVID lows. I would anticipate some way, some fashion, we end up retesting that as a resistance And that's what I think is going to be our downfall to pretty much take the next significant leg to the downside. In which next level that I'm watching to the downside is going to be this 3883 that I have as well. That's going to basically be equivalent to our lows from our September 6th, where we started this little miniature rally that we've had. All right. So 3883 is going to be that next low below 3940. And then my next level of, you want to say critical support, will be roughly right around that 3822 spot is what I'm going to be watching. So it all depends. If you're looking, you didn't partake in the puts today, you didn't hold any kind of puts overnight, and you're looking for that next potential bounce, I think the most ideal spot would be if we potentially get the bounce back up towards testing the anchor view up at that 3990 spot on ES. That's ideally what I would look for. I think potentially, I don't think you get anything above that to say if you're going to get a more ultimate, type of entry point. But I think that'll likely be the most ideal spot that I can think of right now. Otherwise, you're looking to basically look to accelerate below that 3940. You're going to end up pressing into these lows here yet again, as we did pretty much all day today. And you're going to confront the breakdown under 3920 here. And that's going to take you straight down towards those lows of September 6th. And then right into where will be my next meaningful reversal level at that 3822 spot. So that's what I would pretty much say. I know most of you will likely look to see, where can I get that ultimate entry point? Again, that's would be retesting that anchor view up at 39.90. Otherwise, you press below that 39.40, you look to break under 39.20, and you basically look as your profit taking spot per se as those lows of September 6th. Sitting basically at 38.83 half is what you're looking at. All right. So that's pretty much just giving you a gist of what I'm looking at. I mean, obviously, I don't expect a bounce beyond 39.90 to the upside here. If we do get that, I do not even think you get past 39.94. But if for whatever reason you wick over 39.94, your upside will be sitting right back at 40.29 is what I was looking at pre-market for your meaningful support. And that's where we kind of teetered at pre-market, was between that 40.30 level right around above or below. That's where we pretty much teetered until we ended up getting that drop at the open. All right. So that's pretty much looking at futures. What else can I point to? Let's see what other name we wanted to look at. I could probably look at Boeing. I know that Boeing was actually pretty much on my watch list. I know that they have news coming out. I'm looking at kind of deciding at what point in time I want to get an entry on Boeing. I know that they're going to have some news coming out relating to China and their plane. So, do I think that is going to necessarily be one of those names that maybe ends up rallying despite whatever market conditions are within the coming weeks? Is entirely possible. But I just kind of like the setup in this entire little descending channeling action that you have going on. You're basically approaching right into the halfway mark of this little descending channeling action, in which you've seen multiple times here, dating back to what is it, starting to March of last year. You can basically see that this little halfway mark of this descending channeling action has actually been a meaningful reversal spot. So may this time end up being based on news. It's entirely possible. But I am looking at this one potentially. I want to see this end up holding it coming down towards 142 and looking for a meaningful reversal at that 142 spot. So I'm going to have this one on my radar here within the next couple of days. So I thought I'd share that one, as I know they're going to have news and also pretty much a key level that you've seen. It's had a meaningful reversal yet again multiple times through this entire channel. So 142 is going to be that spot I'm going to watch on this one potentially within the next. I would probably say we probably breach that, whether it be tomorrow or going into Thursday. And I'm gonna look to see if I get a starter position for some far outdated expiration on this one, whether it be likely towards maybe the end of October, or maybe I even go out towards December. Just depends. All right. So I am liking at that one right around 142. I'll see how I end up thinking about that one. Obviously, we do have to consider the market does have more significant downside, obviously. So that's just something that I'm contingent upon to think about. But 142, just looking at key levels, that's the level that I would pretty much make note of on Boeing. Um, Moving on, pretty much Apple, that was a hell of a rug pull we had. After looking at the relative strength that Apple had yesterday for us, that was kind of interesting to see that. It went up $6 yesterday to be down basically double digits at the low of the day. That was very significant for it. Once we ended up cracking below this daily 200 EMA at that 155 half spot, that told me that it was pretty much going to be broken and we're going to see more significant downside. and that's where you saw it's pretty much basically close enough already towards that where we gave up the entire rally that we started from that September 6th mark. It's already pretty much already given up the entire rally almost. So that's pretty much what I'm looking at to pretty much take out the lows that you're sitting at, which is September 8th below 152.68. My next level of meaningful support is not until we get down towards that 150 level, which is likely going to also act as a mental number. All right, so 150 is going to be that level I'm going to watch for. You could basically see that's where it's made a high, July 20th, 21st. You've teetered between support to resistance for most of that part until November of 2021. And then you also had a meaningful resistance also as well on two occasions of May of this year and also June of this year as well. So that's pretty much two standing points that actually looked as previous resistance. So once we get down to that 150 level, which could be realistically tomorrow or Thursday, I would expect to find a no quote unquote dead cat to meaningful no short term bounce before next leg lower. All right. So those are kind of ones that just stood out to me. Alvarado, you want me to see Meta? I'll take a peep. Let's take a peep at Meta for you. I think I do have a zone highlighting. Actually, yes, I do. That's actually quite interesting. Meta's been one. This thing just feels like it's been in the gutter. Like it's literally one of those kind of stepchildren where it's been showing no love. But that chop that we've had here since pretty much June, I want to say, it's been quite disgusting just because of how much the range has been just within, I want to say, what, $20 range for about, what was this, about roughly 2 to 3 months here that we've been in. But we finally took out a new low here for what we've had since we ended up making all-time highs. We finally cracked below this 155 in a meaningful way. I do have support sitting right down at this 148 half is what I'm looking for. So you could say that's roughly about another $5 to the downside here potentially. So I'm going to look at 148 half. That's where I would expect you to get a meaningful reversal. You will likely end up retesting this 155 spot from 148 support. So that could be a potential short-term no bounce, I want to say. Obviously, you're going to look for the broader market to see if that pretty much is in agreement. But if I'm looking at key levels, you look for support at 148. Look to retest that 155 that has acted as a meaningful support for these past 3 months. And I would expect that 155 to act as a resistance if you do end up getting that far. All right. So support 148, potential upside is back up to 155 before we get another leg to the downside. All right. Let's see what else was mentioned. Folks are suggesting a bounce tomorrow where we can reload puts. Christina, that was actually the point I was getting to on ES. I was looking for a bounce back up towards 39.90 to 39.92 on ES. That's pretty much where I have an anchored view up, which I would anticipate is going to act as a resistance. How much more of a significant bounce more than that? I don't see that potentially happening. That's pretty much my concern. Now, that I could very well be wrong for that because I was anticipating that the market would roll over on Thursday on the back end of jobless claims and with retail data. So it's entirely possible that we get a relief day tomorrow, in which it'll likely be more significant. If I kind of just pop back up towards futures here, it could be entirely possible that maybe we end up retracing back up even as far as 40.29 on futures, if indeed tomorrow is a relief day, and then the market sets up for the leg down on the back end of economic data on Thursday. That's entirely possible. So that's the two scenarios I would say, no, not to be pretty much no looking for one direction predominantly. I would say either we get the bounce all the way up towards 40.29 or you see that resistance at 39.92 to 39.90. All right. So that's covering that. You mentioned QQQ. I'll take a peep at QQQ for you. Looking at QQQ, I actually have the bounce here relatively lower than pretty much I would anticipate. But you have your support sitting right around this 296. We could overstretch as high as 297, but I don't anticipate the Qs going higher than 297. And if I pretty much outline this to kind of give you the relative resistance that you've had, if I kind of just give you a line across, you can basically see the level that I'm going to outline has actually acted as a prior resistance yet again as well. That's where you ended up hitting a high dating back to June 27th of this year. You hit that same level yet again July 8th. You hit smack that resistance July 19th before you broke out for a little rally. And then that's exactly the level where you ended up breaking down. You tried to reverse off of that 297 level yet again. And then you ended up getting the little bull rally that we had. little bear rally that we had. So 297 will be my retrace on the Qs. That's where I would anticipate, again, kind of in cohesion with futures, how I'd say 39.92 to maybe up to 40.29. I don't think you potentially get higher than 297 on the Qs here. If indeed you do get higher than 297, I would likely say there's a little bit your next level of resistance if we were to stretch north would be right around this 298 half mark if you were to stretch that no a point half more. 298 half would be that overextension to the upside if we do get a bigger relief rally than I expect. But I anticipate 297 to be that resistance, and you're gonna look for the breakdown right below that low here off of that 293 spot. All right. So that's the Qs. And net, you also mentioned BTU. I have not looked at BTU. What is this? Because I'm definitely not remembering it exactly. Energy. Okay, so that makes sense now. Let's see off the daily. I mean, 4 might be a little deceiving, so let's stretch it out to the daily here. Let's see what we're sitting at. So looks like off the daily here, we're kind of teetering right off of this 100-day EMA right now. So I know that energy relatively, I would anticipate that energy is going to get a rebound. More so that tech is going to continue to take the punishment. I would anticipate energy is going to get somewhat of a relief, especially if the markets don't bleed out as aggressively as it did today, and maybe we have some kind of range bound day tomorrow. I would anticipate we see the rebound out of energy here. So that's kind of maybe one highlight I would probably say. Now, given the fact in that same breath, I do think that you have support sitting right around this 22 low. I would say right around 22.43 is where I have support sitting on BTU right now. So if that 22.43 can hold on BTU, you look to basically reclaim over that 100 EMA at 22.62. And then your breakout, in which case you'll have a bigger breakout, would be over 23.41. So those are the three key levels I would say for BTU. But then again, that would be in sympathy to the fact that if we end up having the market in a range, we can see energy pretty much get a relief. Otherwise, if we get the aggression in terms of sell off like we did today, I would not bank on BTU pretty much getting a recovery tomorrow. All right. So that's going to definitely depend on the broader market. All right. Other than that, though, I think those are pretty much the few names. I got to say that Netflix rollover that we had today, that was rather aggressive between Meta and on Netflix. Those were two, especially the fact of how much they've already been beaten up. That was rather aggressive. So I kind of did want to mention about that one as well. This one's also pretty much about, I want to say, 3/4 of the way of giving up this entire little miniature rally we've had since September 6th. We are going to likely end up taking out that low below 214.69. When we end up taking out that low at that 214 half roughly, I'm gonna likely end up be looking to retest what was a prior resistance at this 205 mark. And the reason I say that is because obviously you see the large gap down that we had from April when they had their earnings, but you ended up seeing that pretty much between that entire chop between April up until July, you ended up testing that 205 spot as a resistance once, twice, three times before you end up getting a meaningful breakout to test the gap fill. So that was a spot that I'm going to look to end up retracing and to end up testing as a support. So I would keep that one on watch, even though it's bled out as much as it did today. I would not be surprised if this ends up bleeding out even more. And I can say that it's pretty much justified the fact that it's bleeding out as much as it did. Because if we do remember off of their earnings, they ended up reporting that the fact that they end up losing subscribers. And nothing's to say that they're likely end up not still losing subscribers even at this moment. So I can understand the selling pressure. I don't think anyone's pretty much buying the fact that they're going to get a relief out of this for maybe a few months more so. But just playing it off of levels here, you get the breakdown under 214 half. I would look at support at 205 on this one. All right. Woo, I'll take a look at Nike right now. Sorry for silly question. What study or pattern is it that creates those uniform outside channels with the dotted lines down the center? That actual pattern is a little indicator that I have from TradingView. It's actually called parallel channel. So when you kind of get these little actions where you're kind of in a tight range and you're whether you're ascending or you're descending, you can basically pivot off of where you have a descending trendline support level to be the bottom level of that channel, and then vice versa. You can also pivot the resistance of that parallel channel to be where you see maybe an ascending or descending resistance level. So it's just an indicator. If you kind of go over to the top left corner here where you have your trend line, if you go down towards the middle to the bottom here, it's called parallel channel is what it's called. All right. And you can pretty much pick that up. Once you start to play with it, you'll see how once you align it, whether it be the support trend line or resistance trend line, and then you pretty much extend the opposite end, you'll see where the middles lie, or where those dotted lines are. And that definitely helps in telling you where your overhead resistance or overhead support is when you start to roll over. All right. So that's that. Woo, let me get into Nike real quick for you, and then we'll see if we kind of wrap up our session there today. It looks like you've already broken below all levels in terms of EMAs on Nike here. I think I remember someone talking about the fact that this was supposed to get a meaningful bounce here, uh, but it did fall a little bit short. It looks like it couldn't even make it up to the 100 EMA before it ended up, massive breakdown today. Now, support that I'm looking at is at this 105 spot. 105 should be a meaningful support. If I kind of just draw the line out there for you, and I'll kind of just drop a line real quick right there, and you'll see why I say that 105 spot. Let's see if I get it. There we go. So I'll drop a horizontal line. If you see the white line now, what you can basically see is you've anchored off of that 105 spot. May 12th, again, May 20th, you had support to resistance here between basically your month of June up until the beginning of July. And you're basically right back out for that spot yet again, closing in on that 105. So I would look for 105. If you end up rolling over under that 105 spot, your next meaningful level of support is at 102 half is what I'm looking at. All right. So under 105, you look for a breakdown to 102 half, and potentially 102 half would be where I would ideally say you look to maybe potentially get a starter entry if you are looking for a long-term position on this one. 102 half would be where I would say to scale in, and then you would basically be risking right around the support level at that 100 mark that I would anticipate is going to get defended. So 102 half is your starter entry for support, and then you look to defend as a stop loss potentially at that 100 flat. All right. And then of course you're going to be looking to basically break out. If you're going to look for the meaningful reversal here, you're going to want to see this break back north of over 107. All right, just to give you the upside level. All right. Let's see. Other than that, I think that kind of wrapped up. I went through pretty much most of the meaningful text. Apple, Microsoft, you see they basically led the way to the downside. I could probably say Tesla actually did not do as much damage as I anticipated. On a day like today, I seeing the price action pre-market that it was already down what I think about $9-10. I'm surprised that this was not down actually about $20 today on Tesla. That was something that was a little surprising. I'll be watching that 20 EMA here off of the daily, right around that 292 spot. I take that back 288. So 288.35 is where that 20 EMA is here. Under that 288 spot, I think that's going to be pretty much a full-on breakdown in which we're going to take that right down towards 280, in which you're going to see about another $10 move to the downside. So this is one that, given the fact that we already seen how much a lot of the others' names have actually rolled over, your Apple, your Microsoft, Netflix, and Meta, I do think that we could truly see Tesla actually be the one that ends up taking more of the hit on the next leg to the downside, more so than the names that's already rolled over so aggressively today. That's something that kind of just stands out to me. Could that end up being in that way? That I'm saying it, it could possibly. But that's just something that stood out to me. I think that Tesla actually showed a little bit more resilience to bleeding out than a lot of those four key names that I just mentioned. So I'm definitely going to keep Tesla on the radar here going into the end of the week, especially to see if Tesla actually takes a little bit more of the leading role to the downside here once we start to take the next leg to the downside yet again. All right. So kind of felt like I should have highlighted that. Other than that, though, I will leave it as is. Let's see where the bounce is tomorrow on futures. Again, I kind of gave you those pinpoint entries that you're looking at for those overhead resistance. Once we do get whatever potential type of bounce I would anticipate we get tomorrow morning, look for those bounces, but at the same time, don't try to pretty much chase the downside. All right, that's probably one of the bigger things I would say. Don't try to chase the downside at this given point. I think you had an opportunity all day today to chase the downside, but if you're going with that kind of mindset going into tomorrow, I would likely end up saying that you're likely going to find yourself, kind of regretting the fact that you got that entry point more so. So just stay patient tomorrow. Wait for whatever kind of bounce you can get. Wait for whatever retracement. I think Dapper kind of highlighted a beautiful entry point for everyone on live today. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he ended up getting everyone on an entry off of a VWAP. that's kind of the thing that you're going to want to look for tomorrow. Those of you that kind of have our indicator pack, that definitely gives you that idea of those levels that you're watching for, gives you those PT levels as well. So if you're looking for the VWAPs, if you're looking for pretty much the higher, low, and intermediate anchor VWAP levels to pretty much get a retest, and then look for those retests to get an entry point. That indicator pack definitely gives you that idea. And you could probably see that. I think we actually have the description right below on the YouTube channel here. If you scroll down, I know the indicator pack's right there. That definitely actually helps you, especially during these kind of times where you do find yourself feeling like you're chasing one direction or not. So I would definitely keep that in mind. But other than that, I will leave today's session as is. Hopefully, everyone pretty much stayed safe today, or you ended up making bank because I definitely promise you, you had the opportunity today. All right. But other than that, I'll leave it.